We're live, back in action.
All right. Are we ready to go?
Yeah, let's go. We're live.
Okay. Why your rank tracking is not enough. So, hello everyone. I'm John Murch. I'm the Director of Software Engineering here with the famous Mike King.
It's more, I'm Mike King, founder, CEO of iPullRank with the famous John Murch.
Awesome. So, what are we going to kind of go through? So, now that we got introductions covered, let's talk a little bit about what is rank tracking, how rank tracking has changed, how you should be rank tracking, and gaps in rank tracking. And we'll kind of dive into some of these points. Feel free to ask any questions or comments on the side. So let's go. So what is rank tracking? So at its core, rank tracking is the process of tracking a website's search engine position for a chosen set of keyword queries. This kind of opens up the door, and I kind of want to take a step back and go back in time with the original search engines per se. So back in '95, AOL bought WebCrawler, which was one of the main web crawlers search engines back in the day. There's been a few different acquisitions over the time. WebCrawl sold to Excite. AOL rebranded it as its own search engine, which later became AOL Search. They cut a deal with To Go and then finally moved on to link up AOL with Google, and they created a deal in partnership with Google. Now, why is this kind of important? Well, this gets into the original click-through rate model. And the reason this happened was because AOL leaked Google data of about 20 million web queries over a collection of about 650,000 users over 3 months. Now, we've recently been updating this click-through rate data over time. Here in 2016, Larry Kim highlights higher the ranking, the higher the click-through rate. So as more traffic you've seen, the higher you rank for those competitive search terms. So before in the past, I guess historically, rank tracking has been 10 blue links, right? They had paid and organic, there was no personalization, there was no localization, and all the keyword data actually came through on the referrer. This was before not provided. Things have gotten a little more complex since then.
Just a little.
So why rank tracking matters? So traffic comes from ranking, but you need to identify the various drops of your traffic, the competitor landscape, different types of opportunities, as well as look at low performing content or various gaps in the space.
But a key thing to note about, rank tracking, you're just thinking about this as like you're measuring your possibility to some degree, right? Just because you're ranking doesn't necessarily mean those keywords drive traffic, because you can rank and not drive any traffic, right? So rank tracking is a valuable tool, but it's not the end all be all of organic search performance.
Yeah, 100%. It's kind of like the start of the journey. So kind of from taking a step back, like how rankings are calculated, you kind of have your absolute and relative, your, as you said, your standard 10 links, but things have slowly gotten more complex with that is the introduction of personalization, which has a major flaw that I kind of want to call out, Mike and I talked about, which is, when rank tracking is done, it's normally started with a browser that has no cookies, no nothing, no history, and very limited location data. So there's kind of some flaws in that assumption. And
yeah. To that point, it's like, a clean computer that's logged on to the internet for the first time, and the first thing it ever did is perform your search that you're looking to find rankings for, and that's no actual user's context.
Exactly. And, continuing with that, it's also interesting to see Google's evolution providing us some rank data, not just in the actual rank data, but in Google Search Console data. So originally they were providing the data, then with not provided, they basically limited that data. Then they offered up through Webmaster Tools, later Google Search Console, to showcase that data. And then we kind of get into some of the like third parties data, because there's a lot of different processes that go on in order to capture this data from the ranking standpoint and calculate it in different ways.
Yeah, just one quick thing I want to highlight there is that the way that Google measures rankings, or they call it position, is actually very different from how SEOs do it. So as you're seeing in this image here, which comes from Google's own documentation, they measure in like a bit of a, I don't know, an S shape, a sideways S shape, where it's like, cool, first 5 positions in the organic are measured, and then they start measuring the knowledge graph and other features like that are above the fold, rather than going straight down the page like we do in SEO. So if you're comparing your position in GSC versus a rank value from an SEO rank tracking tool, those are 2 completely different values.
So search engines, continue to dramatically change the response and needs of user behavior. As different keywords become popular, or there's more search volume, there'll be different types of changes in the search, in the SERPs, and our tools need to measure and keep pace with some of those cases, and even help drive the innovation of when we're seeing that. So how rank tracking has changed. So kind of some key bullet points, which we're probably all familiar with, and dive into a few of these. Mobile and desktop. So a mobile SERP and a desktop SERP are obviously completely different. They're grabbing more location on the mobile side. There's other continuous scrolling that Google announced with that. You have site links. So, different brands have multiple links depending on those terms. You have personalization, which we kind of touched about a little bit. Localization, a search done in New York versus Pittsburgh, where I am, brings back different results. You have indented results, filters and pills, which we'll get into in a minute. Time of search, this becomes very specific on what time you're doing based on local, to show some of the store details and even product details, which gets into products, being able to show some of the products. And then the pixel height, from basically the pixels measured from wherever that result would be to the top of the page. So one other thing I wanted to also continue that opens up kind of a can of worms of things is just rich snippets. So Google has documented their own listings of all these different rich snippets, but every rank tracker and SERP tracker has different cases and covers a lot of these, and some that are still new and haven't been documented. So mobile and desktop. So this is just an example for auto insurance. The left is mobile, the right is desktop, and it's actually interesting on the left that second ad is below the above the fold. So normally above the fold would be about 600 pixels, and so in this case you're still seeing just all ads. There's no organic link there, which everyone knows, but it's always interesting to kind of take a step back and look at these. So site links, here are the additional links you'd see in like a branded term for a major entity. Localization, so here's a search for pizza in both New York and Pittsburgh, or I guess north of Pittsburgh, to be able to show the different search results from it. So pixel tracking. So Dr. Pete wrote a whole blog post on Moz about the search term lollipop. It's actually kind of interesting how much SERP features are featured in this one SERP. And we'll get into some examples later on this presentation that kind of goes through this, as well as wanted to call out that, pixel height, it's kind of funny. We're all on page 1 for mobile because there is no pagination. It's just a continuous list. Indentation. So it was interesting. Dr. Pete called out about the amount of queries that contain at least 1 indentation. Definitely seen a lot that have 2 or 3. And it's also interesting to see, just this as a concept is abroad on tracking. So when something new that like this gets introduced, how many other, SERP tools provide that insight of this is an indented result and present that data. And rich snippets. So there's a lot of them, and I don't think people really realize just how many different types of snippets that are out there. As you kind of dive deep into doing, keyword research, looking at some of the SERPs, it's always amazes me just how many things break up a SERP versus how historically it might have been different. And then filter and pills. So on the left here, we have Snoop Dogg. If you search for any person, SERP that has a name that's probably been in the news, they most likely have pills navigation up top. You'll also see it in products on the bottom left for AirPods here. And it's interesting even to call out on the right-hand side. So this is a search for a PlayStation 5. This is actually within the SERP as a modal showing pricing of location. So to move from going from 10 blue links to this is something we now see, and being able to articulate that to either a number or capture the information as you scroll looking at rankings is kind of the two different sides of it. Time of search. So I pulled this one on the left side after the Super Bowl. It's really interesting to see Google know when time at events to push up Twitter features. So during active news stories of things happen, they will continuously push, because that's normally the case of real-time content. Similarly, top stories for a lot of branded terms, you'll see different top stories of news of that organization. And I've definitely seen different, news articles get written about that in order to obviously capture the traffic, because in many cases it's easier to rank for a news story than maybe organically for that competitive term. And then the top right, I wanted to showcase the time of day. So this is showing stores open and closed, different times of the SERP provide different information. And with products, so brands and some of the tabs, it's gotten very complex, I guess, kind of over the years and seeing. And it's interesting seeing even just some of these compares do the versus or other compare searches for you if you click through them. And products in general, it's just so fascinating how much this has changed as a space that I don't think people are, really discussing this. So how should you be rank tracking? And I want to kind of get into some of these examples. So here's one on mobile. So this is going to be for coffee grounds. This is a mobile SERP. I took a video. This is just a infinite GIF. It'll show you from as it gets reposted. But basically, the way this SERP goes is there's a mobile ad, there's a mobile top ad, there's a local block, there's people also ask, and then you have your first organic ranking. So even if you show and say, hey, for this term, I rank #1, awesome. There's a lot of other features and other places people may be clicking, even though you rank #1 on. And it's just so fascinating to see this.
Yeah, and I think that's the crux of the discussion here, right? Like when you do rank tracking in the way that it's historically been done, and you're not like looking at your SERPs or all of your SERPs, you don't really understand what you're up against, right? Like if you rank #1 for coffee grounds here, you think you're doing well, but realistically, you're probably not driving many clicks on this keyword. And so this may be a keyword that you spent a lot of time on that wasn't actually valuable. So being able to bring, more comprehensive data into the rank tracking is exactly what you need to be doing in order to be more strategic about which keywords you should be targeting based on where the true opportunity is. Because just looking at search volume, just looking at CTR models, just looking at pure rankings doesn't tell enough of the story for you.
Exactly. And I feel like some of these examples help showcase that, but that's why I'm always a fan of you got to look at that, raw HTML, basically the SERP, and you got to do it with multiple settings and locations and other kind of ways that these are done. So let's dive into another one, Nike Air Jordan. So this is a product SERP. and it's on mobile, and it's fascinating just the amount of images you can see for these results. The other call out is obviously the StockX card showing name, title, ranking, pricing, and just kind of taking a step back and realizing, wow, like there's a lot going on this page, right? And so, you may be ranking on one of these in here, but like, do you realize all the different types of features that are happening on this SERP? People also ask, just showcasing, what's all going on here. Another one that's fascinating to me was March Madness. It's March Madness season approaching, so it's for 2022. The filtered navs are actually affixed and mobile in some of the cases, so they become sticky up top, and you can actually click through them. And in some cases, they do or don't change the SERP. In other cases, they actually re-render just that section. And it's just kind of fascinating to realize, like, wow, okay, so let's take a step back here. Normally, when you think about like a SERP, you just think, okay, like I do the search, here's the page, here are the results, right? Like now you have so much interaction happening on these pages, it becomes much more complex to understand what's all going on or what the user may be doing on that type of SERP. And then kind of continue with some of the products. So here we have affordable wireless headphones. And I started to show some of the pixel heights on these. So here you're on the left, you're ranking number 1, 508 pixels from the top. And the second result, it's only 658, not that bad. But if you're ranked third, you have a people also ask widget, you have popular wireless headphones above you. There's a gap of different features within these. And on the right here, so you have AirPods near me. So you have your local pack, and then you have your, organic 1 through 4, and then you have popular products, people also ask, and then 5 through 6. And what's, interesting to note here is, organic 1 is below the fold, 600 pixels. In this case, it's 966. But, seeing these other more top positions, say you're saying, okay, I'm a top 5, ranking, what other features are pushing you down? So in this case, it's local pack, popular products. People also ask, you really need to understand these different features that are appearing here and how they can also impact some of the content and, obviously your strategy for ranking for these. So another one that's kind of interesting, investment planning. So here, this is a featured snippet for number 1, number 2. They have people also ask above that, but then it's also interesting. You have the financial planners nearby, the ads, and content from here. Again, it's just kind of that insight of, what actually is on that SERP for these keywords. We focus so much time on doing different types of keyword research, grouping, to think through, all this information that the SERP's providing to us. We need to process and digest all of that. So this one may have been a fluke, but so mortgage rate. So this is 2,985 pixels, which is actually higher than the lollipop example from Dr. Pete. And I'm going to be doing more research with this one, but it's fascinating. So the obvious one is that there's a graph, and it was very hard to showcase this screenshot in this slide, but showing the rates of mortgage. And there's been a lot of features that Google introduces, especially in finance. So if you did a search for a stock ticker number like TSLA for Tesla or something, you'll see there's a ton more financial different snippets that really push down those rankings. So again, you may be a top 3 ranking, but you don't realize just how much more content is above you.
Yeah, and so on mobile specifically for this query, like the mortgage space, like you're seeing on the left at the top there, it's like a whole kind of app experience almost. And the only way to really get into the organic side of things is, I can't remember the name of the section, but it's like it's not in the news. It was one of the sections where you basically have to, be a piece of content that's like relevant across the mortgage category. So it's very difficult to organically rank in these queries. And so again, if you're not looking at the SERP, you're not extracting the right features from the SERP to understand what's going on in this space, you might think to yourself like, oh yeah, mortgage, that's an important query, let's go after that. And it's just like, it's not realistic for you to get in there. Or like a query like mortgage calculator, where they do display an actual calculator. Like, I know that's a million searches a month, but is that a realistic query for you to go after, where you'd have to build a calculator, optimize it, and so on? So again, because a lot of people don't end up actually looking at the SERP on a regular basis, and especially with there being so many different features that can be brought in and out, it's very important that you do rank tracking in such a way where you can really surface this and make a determination of whether or not this is a query that you want to continue to invest in.
Yeah, I mean, again, I guess it's kind of just hitting being able to see, the historic change of the SERP over time, as well as, some of the nuances, mobile versus desktop, different locations, how that affects it, the time of day. There's a lot more to it. So another one here, this is kind of interesting with products. So this is women's running shoes. So the one that I want to call out here is more on that fifth result, just how many images they're showcasing here. So this is actually a desktop SERP engine results page. And it's just so fascinating to me to just see this SERP versus some of the previous ones where we did Nike Air Jordans and the mobile side. And like, although there's a lot more images here, there's just so many more on mobile than desktop. So that kind of brings us to the gaps in rank tracking. So Mike actually wrote a great piece. I highly suggest you guys check it out on Proof of Concept, showcasing how to use SERP API to create a rank tracking system. And this gets into kind of some of these crux that we talked about, as well as things that, need to be seen across the board in rank tracking. So, things like understanding pixel height of different SERPs, understanding, if your rankings, how it compares to the other features that may be on the page, and that a placement of 3 organically may mean you're the 25th link down because of a local pack people also ask, and all these other featured snippets.
Yeah, and to the credit of the SEO industry or SEO software industry, some of these things did end up getting adopted a bit more, but a lot of what we're discussing today just kind of indicates that there's still gaps in that intelligence.
Exactly. So that kind of leads us to more of like, at its core, like better insights for change, right? Like, so when we think about like rank tracking, things change that cause the rankings to change, right? But what is that change, right? And I kind of broke down a few points here. So like when you think of like topic clustering, right? What you're doing, well, one way to do it, there's 2 ways. But like one way to take the top, let's say 4 URLs of the top 10 results and to compare them against other keywords and see which keywords are, similar. So for example, if you did mortgage rates PA versus mortgage rates Pennsylvania, are those similar SERPs and have the various same competitors and, domains in there? Optimizing metadata, are there competitors using schema.org? Are we seeing SERP features that showcase question and answer or other rich snippets within there that contain that information? Have pages on there been revised for the new year? Are we seeing all the 2021 content move to 2022? And when did they update that? Did they update the H1 tags as well as the page titles to try to get that stickiness so that the page title isn't rewritten? The link data kind of over time, right? If I write a new piece of content that ranks for a word over time, I'll probably get more backlinks. Like, be able to see this type of information and change helps tell that story and kind of showcase like this is what's going on and why these SERPs are changing, right? So looking at pages of the content, like, are they publishing new posts? Are they targeting new content that's specific for certain terms. It's kind of interesting to take a step back and think of like, if I'm focusing on these types of keywords, am I creating a new sitemap that just targets this new content that I am really pushing to feed to get crawled to try to get, a position or improve traffic on? So kind of thinking through this, you basically have like basic rank tracking. So mobile, desktop, or both, has site links, some rich snippets, and maybe some localization being able to do, right? And even in our space, you have more advanced tracking that has a lot more rich snippets, maybe indentation, looks at pixel height. There's definitely a few players that have a lot of information and break down different SERPs from the pixel, as well as provide the raw HTML, as well as flexible scheduling. So not just, one SERP one day at time, you could run it, every hour or something like that. And kind of the bigger thing that Mike and I are seeing is just more of like rank tracking as a whole. These are areas that I think, need to be discussed and brought about and worked on building tools from. So all SERP changes, basically there's things on a SERP that are actually changing, but you may only be ranking or checking your rankings for one URL. So you'll say, hey, it went from a 10 position to a 2 position. Awesome, great. What else changed on that page, right? Did somebody was at an 83 position, now is it a 10 position? You're like, whoa, there's a new competitor that's, actively going after this. Do I know about that? Are there content changes to pages that are currently ranking where we may rank within the top 3 positions, but somebody else is actively updating their page? Like, we should either know about it or see what changes they're doing. Different types of integration with keywords. So we'll get into some of this, but like just understanding keywords similar in both meaning as well as, very similar for the actual SERP. So, what of my keywords, which ones are very similar as an output? Google Search Console integration. So Google Search Console gives us a ton of data, but being able to integrate and showcase that data with ranking data to help paint a better picture or even just provide other insights of seeing what has increased or decreased in different types of performance. Branded landscape. So this would be if I'm a large property, I may not just have one domain, I may have 100, or if I'm a multi-conglomerate, and understanding where those rank, and maybe even just understand the cannibalization of, is all my 10 properties happen to rank in all the 10 places, so I can drive that traffic. And then finally, just backlinks per page. So, tracking not just backlinks, but again, to some of the internal links, and we'll dive into each of these. So with SERP changes, so as you go through, different types of rank tracking, as I mentioned, things change, right? You'll have new links that show up, you'll have missing links that change, you'll have different sites that improve and others that decrease. And being able to see that fluctuation on a per rank track, per tracked ranking, you'll be able to see kind of what other things are happening on the page. And this helps showcase it, obviously, with different frequencies. So if you're doing this daily, hourly, every 15 minutes, every 30 minutes, to be able to show these types of changes over time to help, indicate, does this SERP change? Or is this been the same, kind of SERP for the past, few months? Which ones are more volatile than others? SERP result page changes. So what other things are happening on the actual results of the page, right? Are they changing their robot set text to disallow certain folders that, kill off something else, or did different types of data migrations? Did they change a bunch of their page titles because Google rewrote them and they're trying to fix that and don't like what's being written? Are there other meta changes with some of the open graph or social cards that they're trying to either improve click-through rate or some other type of insights? Are they doing some type of, heading change with their H1s to match their page titles? Or even looking at anchor or internal linking that they're doing on that page. So you may have a page that they basically turned on, 1,000 different internal links to bump up that article. But, how would you know about that? Maybe you need to crawl the site and see, what's changed from with that. And then the main content, I had to call out the bold text because of John Mueller, that obviously it's not a thing, but to be able to just track the content changes, are they making updates to it or things like that? And then obviously schema or structured data.
Yeah, that's such a huge gap in our space, right? Because it's like you could be crawling competitor sites every week or whatever. But that's obviously very difficult, right? Like you are probably monitoring competitors' rankings and such, which makes sense and isn't necessarily, difficult to the point of, it's not as like you have a tool that just does it, right? That's like tracking rankings and you can compare whatever, but there's not really a way to connect those two things. Like you're just saying, you wouldn't know if a site suddenly built more internal links to a given page. There's like no way for you to have monitor that. Like I guess you could look at Hrefs and look at that week over week, but I'm not even sure they provide that data in that way. You'd have to track on your end, and so that would be largely manual or whatever. So we're just not set up as an industry to close that gap. It's really like you take a snapshot of some kind, and then you kind of guess like what you think they might have done. And so I feel like that's a big missing piece to more actionable rank intelligence.
Well, even just think about it as a whole, right? When you think of like a site audit, right? You have, maybe 5 tools on one side that's more of crawling the site. And when you think of rank tracking, you have another 5 tools on the other side, or, whatever more. And, the connection between them two, like there's a clear gap.
Right.
And like so much of this is fascinating to me because it's like, well, whatever happens on page, obviously Google's picking that up and making determinations and changing, the actual SERP. Like, there needs to be a connection between the two.
Exactly.
So topic clustering. So I kind of got into this earlier, but some X number of URLs in the top 10. There's different tools that do top 3, top 4, top 7. But being able to say, okay, here are the SERPs that are very similar between these keywords. So if we go after this, cluster of keywords, hopefully we can get more that, rank from there. But also understanding, how similar keywords are meanings, right? So different synonyms or other words that we can think through as we put in these terms into a rank tracking solution. Being able to extract out, the people also ask, there's different types of tools that do that, but being able to provide all of that data. There's so much data that Google basically just gives us as part of this SERP. The only problem is, you have to parse it yourself and, come up with ways, which takes time and things like that. But, just take a step back and think, Google's a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. They've spent billions of dollars to basically try to create these rankings and listings and constantly spend all this server power on crawling all this data so that we can just type in a query and it just shows to us, right? Like there's so much money that's been invested on that side. We should be leveraging that even more so as SEOs. And then obviously spotting differences between mobile and desktop. There's a lot of nuances that I've started to see. Again, it's just more of the gap within these tools. Google Search Console. So hopefully everyone's using some form of their API to pull out their data, as their UI and tool is great, but the API provides a lot more data. And if you break down this data on a per day, being able to overlay this GSC data with your rankings data can help kind of showcase or at least look at and see like what's either dropping, what's improving, what other insights can you conclude from there? And yeah, I feel like there's just a whole laundry list that this gets into that's kind of interesting when you start adding third-party data to your rank tracking. So branded landscapes. So here's an example for Ralph Lauren. And on the bottom, I want to highlight three somewhat branded sites within. So, normal rank tracking, you say, okay, they're position 1, cool. Oh, there's site links. Maybe you see, okay, you have ads on here, but like you have at least 2, if not 3 sites that you want to track as well. And a lot of the tools charge more money to keep track of these, if you want to have as like competitors or something like that. But this data already exists in what you're already getting pulled. So to be able to say, okay, like Ralph Lauren Homes is also on this SERP, is there a way I can group these Ralph Lauren related terms and segment them per site, or say, okay, I want these keywords hopefully to try to rank for these different branded properties. And even something like Facebook, in this case, although it's facebook.com, but it's really Ralph Lauren's Facebook, I think it's group or community. And so like to be able to know that as a social media manager or something, can be important. And just being able to segment the SERP by different types of branded URLs. And then backlinks per page. So obviously this gets a little tough because you have to do both backlinks using some of the more known players in the space, but then possibly other internal tools. But as you produce content, it gets backlinks over time. Being able to track that and seeing how that improves or affects different rankings for that term can be hugely beneficial. A lot of this is still done manually, but it should be an automated process. It takes a lot of resources in order to go and do that.
So John, we had a question coming in about this. I'm gonna put it on the screen from Atravito 82. He says, serious question for Q&A. If we know backlink indices or indexes are always incomplete in ways we can't validate, are consistent across domains, what gives you confidence that it's a useful rank tracking data point? And so the answer to that is we don't. But at the same time, it is a data set that we use, or they are the data sets that we use in the space. And so, just seeing whether or not there was or was not growth, that's an indication, or it can be a correlation between improvement in rankings. Generally speaking, we tend to agree as an industry that if you build more links to a page, that page will improve in rankings. And so being able to see that side by side with competitors, you can get a clear indication of what happened or what was done to make that page rank better. So we don't imagine that it's going to be, a perfect solution, because there is no perfect data in our space, but it is going to be good directional data to indicate, this website built all these links. And so that's probably a key reason why they made these improvements.
Yeah, I want to highlight on that as more directional data, right? Like none of this data is perfect. Even Google makes mistakes, and GSC will be down, or there'll be some other issues. So like us as SEOs should just take this as either okay, this is the direction. I'm going to go and see if it improves and run a test, or see what I can do with that. So take certain things, I guess, with a grain of salt. So kind of recap on our ranking gap. So, we have kind of the all SERP changes. So being able to track not just our rankings of where we are, but everyone on a SERP, being able to track the changes of the page that are ranking on the SERP, being able to, look and group different keywords and compare different SERPs to see which ones are very similar. Being able to integrate GSC or other third-party data solutions, being able to parse and break out branded sites, and then obviously some of the backlinks that we talked about. There's a few other topics that I wanted to call and mention. I don't want to dive into search intent, because I'm sure Mike could probably give a whole webinar on that and has many words about it. But I did want to call it out as something that I definitely think about in the SERP space. The next topic is something kind of near and dear to my heart, is basically a rank parsing rerun. I found a few issues when we pull different SERPs from different providers. And although they can fix the issue, it doesn't fix my historical data. So the idea of being able to rerun data, or if there's something new and Barry confirm that it's new and people are seeing it, how can I rerun it? So I think this morning he talked about on the knowledge panel when phone number was last verified. I think you can see like it was like 8 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, there was a tweet that went out. But can I go backwards and say, hey, all these ranks that happen, can I reparse this and then be like, all right, cool, these are the changes. Let me go showcase that and see that data. It's definitely kind of an interesting thing because it allows for monitoring more historic and going back in time with the new knowledge that you may have learned today. Paid and organic data, I don't think many people are really merging the two. I know when I was both in-house as well as doing a lot of freelance consulting, I don't know why, but paid and organic are always on two different teams and there's a wall in between. And there's a lot of paid data that should be shared on SEO. And there's a lot of things like if you're going after a keyword before even just trying to rank for it, find out its conversion by throwing up a landing page and running paid ads. Like that should be step one. And it's like, all right, cool. These keywords convert. Let's now spend some time, some money, start ranking for them, right? But like there's a big disconnect between there. And then, there's some, I guess, kind of limitations on sharing of the data, especially with this. So like, the cost to do some of this or the skewed data, if I'm running all these SERPs in a small market, my impression data or trend data may be shooting up because I'm the one causing this. And, if you want to look at like every regional market, there's a cost of just like processing that data. But then there hasn't been, or I haven't seen many secondary markets for other types of shared data or other data to be able to share across that, obviously you paid to capture all this data, like that might be useful and it may not be related to keyword terms that, are branded or contain other information that you would care about. So it's kind of interesting for me. So what's next? So
drum roll, please.
So we have a little bit of an announcement. So we're going to be launching Exact Science, which is our rank tracking software that addresses a lot of these problems because we feel like there's a gap in the market. And there's a lot of things that I just want to kind of highlight and showcase in some of these screenshots that we've done, being able to show pixel position, different types of ranking, whether it be branded, competitive, or the site, some of the SERP features, as well as, different types of tagging and categorization you could do. So there's a lot more to come about this, but wanted to have a somewhat big announcement. And for all those asking the next question, yes, sign up for testing out our beta. So if you go to iPullRank.com/beta-testers, you can sign up and join our wait list, and we'll be slowly reaching out to every one of you and starting to test some of our solutions against some of your problems. And if you do have problems for ranking for different things or have ideas, please reach out and let us know, because that is now something that I'll be actively pursuing. So yeah, just wanted to thank you guys for coming. You can reach me on Twitter at @JohnMurch. And I think, I lost you, Mike.
Any questions from the folks at home? I don't see any just yet, but in any event, so can you talk about, some of the ways to present a lot of this data? I know a lot of this is quite different from what is currently being done in rank tracking solutions and so on. So for instance, we talk a lot about, showing the differences and so on. How do you think, or what are you thinking are the best ways to surface that information to people so that they can actually, use it?
Yeah, I think there's kind of a few different cases. So like, breaking down not just the SERP features, but the position of where they are. and being able to showcase that, third position may actually have like 2 features above it or some other nuance with that, as well as just kind of like how can a way to also alert of changes? So that's something that I've definitely been thinking a lot about. So like, what are the differences? We talk a little bit about SERP changes. So what's new, what's missing, what has improved, what has decreased, a way to kind of show that per keyword. And to kind of also just think about, like, in terms of SERPs, right? You have your keyword, then you have maybe your device, mobile, desktop. You also have, breakdown of location of where you're doing it, and then obviously your, search engine provider, which I would just say is Google from there, but other ones from there. But just taking a step back to kind of think through of like how to present that data, it starts to create new layers of opportunity, and to be able to showcase that on, not just like a tabular form, but a graph and things like that.
Yeah, and do you think that there is a world wherein, from a combination of features, the combination of the position of the pixel position of the first ranking, that we could, or that someone might say like, hey, this keyword is rated, as a green like keyword that's worth going after, or this one's a yellow one, or this one's a red one. Like Wikipedia ranks first, and everything is pushed down to 1600 pixels. Like, do you think there's a world where rank tracking becomes that actionable and gives more guidance in that way?
Definitely. I feel like some of that can just be a matter of running keywords through and then looking at the results and taking and basically bubbling up that information, right? So, you mentioned Wikipedia, right? How, outside of exporting all of your data, how could you say, has this URL, what keywords did this exist in all of my SERPs, right? And just that as a concept, right, is like, becomes so actionable, because then it'd be like, oh wow, my competitors launched a new site, I wonder which keywords of mine appear in that. Or maybe I'm a brand that just acquired a new brand, and now I'm like, hey, maybe we should take a look and see what is cannibalized, who ranks for what, or what we could post up, or maybe even some site migration we're doing. Like, it becomes more powerful when you start looking at the data in a bigger way, as well as just kind of understanding some of these nuances as you go through and take a look at some of the SERPs. I mean, yeah, it's been very fascinating starting to see larger number of data sets.
Okay, question just came in from Atravito82. He says, a very common use case for ranked data explaining traffic growth / pattern changes. Will Exact Science automate any of that work if, say, it is integrated with the client web analytics? And he gives an example. PDP in men's fashion category seeing anomalous 5% drop in traffic. Ranked data shows all ranks impacted by product comparison module begin added accounting for that delta. Thoughts?
Yeah, so I definitely feel like if nothing in the SERP changes, it gets into some of the other what's changed on the page that are ranking. But I would imagine in some of these cases, you would see features go above your ranking that most rank trackers would not see. And that's something we're basically can do.
Cool. Any other questions from the folks at home? Well, either way, this is very exciting stuff. Thanks, John, for you and everything that you've been working on and sharing today. And also thanks to all the folks that have joined us today. Hope you feel or get the value from what we shared today, and also consider becoming a beta tester, because this is obviously something that's near and dear to us, and we're definitely investing in creating a next generation tool. So definitely would love the feedback from the community. And that's all we've got. So let's thank you all for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.